such a pleasure to have you guys. Probably one of the most exciting panels of this event. So let's get straight into it. So first of all, let's get everyone to introduce themselves, even though I feel like everyone knows who you are already, but let's just do it briefly. Stani?
Stani Kulechov, so I'm the founder and CEO of Aave, and Aave is behind a few products, for example, known from Aave, which is the biggest lending and borrowing protocol with 17 billion net deposits and deployed across 12 different networks at the moment. And also from Lens Lab, we built the Lens protocol, which is a resilient social networking infrastructure. And also we have a family wallet, which is focusing on great design and experience and bringing more people into the space.
Thank you. Loy?
Hey everyone, my name is Loy. I'm based here in Singapore, a product of NUS, the local school here. I went to the same lab with Yaoqi, founder of AltLayer. I think Kyber...
And an angel investor in AltLayer.
Oh yeah, I mean, happy to support a lab mate, right? So Kyber was, I think we were one of the earliest DeFi protocols back in 2017. And, we started as a, decentralized chains running fully on chain. And over the years, we have migrated and become more DEX aggregator. And now we're still one of the top one, still fully focused on Ethereum and EVM chains. So that's why I wear this Ethereum jersey today. I think I stepped out 2 years ago, but still help out the team here and there and focus a lot more on the venture building side at Caliber. The goal is to bring, help the new generation of founders to build a more exciting startup in crypto and still focus a lot more on DeFi. Yeah.
Hey guys, my name's Hart Lambur. I'm the co-founder of both UMA and Across. We all started protocols before DeFi was actually a term. I think it was in 2018, right? People were debating between DeFi and open finance, or OFI, I guess. And DeFi went out, so it's been a bit. So UMA is a optimistic oracle, an oracle for long tail data. We're best known right now for supporting Polymarket, which is seeing some breakout traction. So an oracle to help resolve arbitrary questions in prediction markets, which maybe we can talk a bit about. And then a couple years ago, spun out of UMA in an interesting history. We started a cross protocol, which is intent-based interop. So we're intent-based bridging, trying to bring a beautiful user experience, a very quick and fast interoperability experience to help unite Ethereum that is kind of being defragmented by the amazing scalability L2s are giving us, but causing some interop UX problems, which I'm sure we'll talk on too.
Okay, I have a tough question for you to follow on. Since you all are known for the projects you started with, and you all have started kind of a new venture, a spin-off or a new business. So how are you splitting your time? What are you really focused on?
Well,
it is a hard question.
I mean, I don't really track my time. I wake up, I start working, and at some point I stop working, go to sleep, and there's a bunch of things to do. But I think it's just everything that we do at Aave. It's pretty much it's a composition of multiple products, and some of these products are more of infrastructure as well, protocols, and I think. I've been building now roughly 7 or 8 years in the space, and Aave as an ecosystem has evolved significantly. So first of all, we've been really lucky enough to actually build something really valuable and something that really is empowering users and is a public good at the moment. So Aave as a protocol is governed by the Aave DAO, and we are one of the contributors in the DAO from the Aave Labs. And essentially, that's actually a great thing because we, as a team, we can contribute to the existing vision like Aave 2030 and build a new version V4 and other initiatives on the roadmap, but at the same time, there's other people that are contributing to that same vision and are service providers in the Aave ecosystem. Lens is, on the other hand, it also has shared DNA with Aave and makes it quite easy to switch between these products and think about them from vision perspective and also architecture. I think what we did with Aave is essentially created a way of tapping into financial opportunities in a way where everyone has accessibility, ownership, and with Lens, we're tapping into ownership into social capital. So there's two different concepts, but we're trying to solve a similar problem. And then in family, it's more about onboarding more users into the space and access everything that we all build here. So everything we do has kind of like a shared DNA. And at more higher level on Avara, we're building the people-powered internet. So it's just like a next generation of internet that basically all these applications have some sort of use case there. And yeah, I think that's probably how I think about everything.
I have to say I'm a big fan of Aave. I've been trying very hard to get a ticket to Aave parties every time.
We all do.
And the first thing you do is to snatch the merch because the Aave t-shirts are all limited edition for each occasion. Yeah, I think it set the trend for the whole industry. Now we're kind of doing the same thing with our merch.
And Aave is, I mean, it's also an event that takes a lot of time to actually to do. But obviously, in our team, Paris from our team is taking all the credit because she organizes them with our team. So we actually have a lot of people at Avara. So we're 80, so we're still very lean across multiple products. But if you have a team that is all completely aligned to that vision that you're pursuing, it makes much more easier to achieve these things that we're building.
Nice. Okay, next up, Loy.
Well, I mean, I'm not as good as like Stani in terms of like managing like multiple ventures or products at the same time, right? So basically, what I did was, when the team like became, like at the size of like 50-ish, I realized that now's the time for some sort of like professional manager, but still like founder kind of type, come in and manage the team, right? So that's why I stepped out, and my CTO basically stepped up, and he's been like doing a great job of basically managing the team and like scale up the product. Because like to us, I think I'm not sure if you follow like the DEX aggregator space, but like it's been becoming a lot more professional these days, right? I mean, like even like our team, we have probably like our algorithm team like that work on like optimizing the rate. Probably has like 5 or 7 people that work on like competitive programming and like trying to compete the rate. Like even a $1 million trade, like I think all the different aggregators are competing over like $0.50 in terms of like rate. So that is like super like aggressive and competitive. But yeah, I mean, like I think when I stepped out, I realized that I should have like done it earlier, right? Because like my former CTO and now CEO of Kyber, he did a great job of like managing the team, managing the product, and basically making sure that everything did on track, right? So yeah, I mean, I think yeah, and for me, like working at Caliber, my role is basically like supporting like all the new founders, right? And I think that's what I enjoy the most, like basically like supporting founders and helping them like making the 0 to 1 transition. And that is I would say like the most beautiful part of a startup. I mean, from 1 to 10 or 1 to 100, I think it's like a lot more challenging and a lot more like management focused.
Yeah. Some of you might not know in the audience that Loy is known as Vitalik in Vietnam. So he's kind of like a crypto god in Asia. People look up to him. Okay, Hart, here you go.
Yeah, so Stani alluded to this. Like, okay, so when investors ask me like, hey, how do you split your time between Uma and across? It's a good question, right? Because they want you to be focused and they want you to be all in. And I mean, we are as a team. One of the things that we've realized that I think our team in particular is world-class at is creating protocols to incentivize off-chain actors. And both our protocols actually do the same thing. So on the UMA system, this optimistic oracle, we need to incentivize people to dispute invalid things. We need to incentivize voters to then vote on disputes. And across this intent-based design, we've built a marketplace for off-chain actors to fill transactions. And I think we've actually zoned in on our expertise as this specific type of use crypto to enforce rules that off-chain actors have to follow, and we're really able to do both things better by kind of applying the same thinking in both domains. So that's the way we look at it. And yeah,
Well said.
and then just work really hard. Like Stani's answer was bullish. She's like, I wake up, I work, then I go to sleep, and then I wake up and then work. Sounds bullish.
Obviously, I do like non-work stuff, so don't take it too like literally.
Yeah, so you guys are all OGs. You guys basically set the cornerstone for the whole industry for DeFi, and you guys were the trendsetters. So tell us, what are the trends for the next 12 months? We want to hear from you guys.
Who's the best person to predict? Hart?
Well, I'll just.
You run oracles, right?
Oh, that's serious.
Prediction market.
I think a lot of the DeFi stuff, in my mind, it's back to the basics. I think where DeFi has had traction, it's in lending and exchange. So you guys can talk on this too. And what I think is happening now. So okay, my general take is during DeFi summer, we had a big problem, which is that Ethereum didn't scale. If you guys were around, it was like $200 transaction fees, and just like it was a mess. It wasn't really. So yeah. And we have, and I don't think we celebrate Ethereum's successes enough, particularly right now. Like with Denkun, L2 transaction fees went down to pennies, and we now have like a Solana-like experience on these L2s. And I think it's truly amazing how we've solved scalability. The problem is that we introduced a new problem, which is this like interoperability. We now have all these chains, and it's really fast and cheap, but we got to connect them. So I think, and I mean, this is maybe shilling across a little bit, right? But I think that figuring out how we connect these chains and have a user experience that makes it feel like one chain and enables you to do the basic DeFi functions of borrowing or of exchange and lending, that's really what I think the focus for the next 12 months like should be, and I think that's what it's going to be. I think that's just where user demand is.
Cool. I will share like some other different perspective. So back in like 2018, when we were after a couple of months after we launched Kyber, and I think back then everything was so small, so early, right? Like we would be happy if we got like $50K dollar volume per day, right? And now we do like casually like 50 million ish per day. So we realized that back then there wasn't much asset for people to trade, right? So I think in Singapore, when we met with like Ben Chan, my good friend, who formerly CTO at BitGo, and Mel, who's now founder of Jupiter, we decided like to bridge like Bitcoin liquidity over Ethereum, right? And that's why we created like WBTC. So now I started seeing more Bitcoin DeFi, right? Like more DeFi activities from the Bitcoin side. And what interesting is that most of them still like have a kind of like EVM compatibility kind of model for their Bitcoin layer 2. And I mean, thanks to I think all the new project in the Bitcoin ecosystem too, like say Babylon, who just presented earlier. I think we'll start like seeing more like activities on the Bitcoin side. I think just want to add another point on top of what Hart just said about the usability, the user experience. I think we also like started like seeing a lot more improvement from the UX side on user onboarding, right? Like now people leverage like say passkey a lot more to allow people like to create like a relatively safe way to create a new like private key, for example, right? Instead of like say back in say a couple of years ago, we still need like to write down all the seed phrase and people like don't understand what they meant. Yeah, and I think that hopefully like will help like onboard a lot more users to us to crypto and to DeFi in general.
Yeah. Also, I echo the the fact that kind of like we're going back to fundamentals. And I think in DeFi we're in a really exciting place because a lot of interesting things happened during like DeFi summer over a couple of years ago. But now we're finding out that actually you can build a public good that is really valuable and useful for everyone, and at the same time can be governed by a community. So Aave is an example, because that's something that I work very closely with. Aave as a protocol is making revenue across all these 14 deployments in different networks, and is governed cross-chain fully, which is amazing. And that revenue essentially partially is used to reward back to the users and actually stimulate growth as well and adoption. So I think the fundamentals is really kind of like a really interesting moment at this point. And I feel like there's kind of like a DeFi renaissance going now, where people are looking at these protocols that are having fundamental cash flows, and it can be from like lending, borrowing, but I include also bridges and cross-chain compatibility, where you have this kind of cash flow and using that cash flow to actually empower the users. And speaking of the transaction costs, I think it's quite a big, interesting movement now. I think it's going to go, it's a race to the bottom in terms of like sequencer fees and transaction cost. And I think like big movement in the future will be that users won't be paying any transaction fees. So at some point we'll move into an environment where users are going to expect free blockchain usage, and that can be absorbed by, let's say, developers building these interesting applications and maybe fueled by some sort of grants and credits. So we probably will see a lot of social and consumer application being built this way. And it's quite exciting because then for the users, you're using Web3 the same way as you will be using the internet. And this is possible because we have now Validium and data availability layers where you can actually split the consensus and also storing the state and go into very low cost of transactioning. I think that's going to be interesting for DeFi as well, because you can actually take DeFi then and plug into these different social use cases and consumer use cases and actually empower a lot of this usage. And obviously, a lot of this will happen across multiple networks. So there is that liquidity fragmentation that has to be solved. And I think that solving just that piece of component is going to be really an interesting challenge.
That's kind of account abstraction and chain abstraction.
Yeah, I wanted to like just to be kind of a little bit spicy and supports Stani's view, but maybe counter to some other folks. Like, I'm not actually that bullish on a lot of the yield farming stuff. And I think it's kind of funny because we all lived through DeFi summer and all these yield farming things. And I think it's having lived through that, the lack of sustainability it just feels like it becomes more of a hype cycle. But to Stani's point, like there are legitimate, durable businesses that DeFi has created, again, mainly around exchange and lending, like that are real businesses. They make revenue because they provide a service that users want to pay for. And transaction fees are low enough now that it's like you're not paying away a lot of cost to just network fees. You're paying for the service you want to use. And like, I think a very bullish thing for crypto and for Web3 is like that we are actually building durable businesses that make money and have revenue. And that is freaking cool. And I'm much more bullish on these like fundamental businesses than the yield farming stuff. And across too, like, you know, we're a relatively new protocol that has real revenue going through it because users want to pay to bridge. So I think it is like this back to the basics, like a little bit like let's ignore the fake. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think the yield farming thing has become kind of a bootstrapping strategy rather than a real business selling point or a real business model. Okay, we've touched on what are the exciting business trends you identify for other DeFi builders and the followers. Now let's talk about something more controversial, something more conceptual, which is Vitalik's recent comment on DeFi. I'm sure all of you got ads. People probably asked you guys to express your opinion. You probably already did. So I guess the issue of this controversy is really like all the DeFi projects kind of started from Ethereum and also made Ethereum great. Like without DeFi, I don't think Ethereum would be Ethereum we see today. So as a thought leader or like a spiritual leader of this Ethereum tribe, Vitalik made his nasty or like somewhat negative comments on DeFi. What's your hot take on it?
Yeah, I think that I do think like, so Vitalik uses DeFi. So he uses Aave. He uses a lot of things that are built here, and I think also that a lot of the blockchain narrative comes from finance. So Bitcoin tried to solve a financial problem and peer-to-peer cash. Ethereum basically brought a operating system that you can create programmable finance and a bunch of other interesting use cases. So DeFi was in some ways like organically came out of this narrative as well. And a lot of interesting other things at the same time that necessarily didn't see the light of end of the tunnel. But it's I would say that it's more about that maybe Aave and also Vitalik takes more of they might see that DeFi is something that kind of like would regardless will survive. There are people who are using it, and there's demand, and there's there's a strong community, and there's these other interesting use cases where you can use actually the on-chain environment that are non-financial and might need a little bit more support. So DevCon, for example, didn't have a DeFi track, but they have all these other interesting tracks. So I think that's one part of it. The second part of it, like DeFi also has legit criticism. What Hart mentioned, that if everything is built on distribution of governance power, where like where the actual yield is coming from at that point, and who is the yield. And I think that it's a fair comment that the yield sources, or let's say the yield quality, has to diversify, which will happen over time. But I think also there's one concept that is really misunderstood, which is like the collateralization aspect. So if you want to borrow, let's say, stable coins out of the Aave protocol, you need to bring a collateral. And there's a misconception that actually without a collateral, Aave is useless. But that's not actually the case, because Aave is simply a backbone infrastructure for all kinds of credit extensions. And that can happen in any part of any region, actually. And giving an example is that we can issue credits the same way as we're issuing today, let's say in Singapore or different European regions or wherever, use the same credit assessment, use the same kind of like institutions, but just tokenizing those that credit and putting it on chain, and then using in Aave as a collateral, drawing more capital and funding more opportunities. So in some ways, Aave could become like a backbone of all credit extension, and that creates more extension of credit, and that creates more growth of credit markets as well. And everything is happening on a transparent ledger. You can audit it end to end. So that's something I want to point out. But also, I do think that we still have a lot of work where we have to go beyond the existing kind of like usual suspects of like lending, borrowing, exchanging value, and thinking kind of like how we can plug in this more into the real world and actually show concrete examples. And I think we have a really good community if we can openly discuss these types of topics, because like we won't get better if we won't be able to actually think what kind of parts we have to change in our infrastructure or the way we think about finance in general.
Lloyd?
Yeah, I mean, like I think in general, I think DeFi has grown to the stage that it doesn't need like any like validation or approval from anyone. I think a lot of say a lot of the blue chip like DeFi protocols already like had like say you know positive cash flow and things like that, right? And also like I think DeFi is probably the one of the few like product market fit kind of in crypto, right? So, but that's not to say that Vitalik doesn't like DeFi, right? I think he likes DeFi. I think he was our advisor, and Ethereum Foundation like gave birth to like Uniswap and a lot of other like DeFi protocols. It's just that I think probably like now the foundation has like other focus that they want to like push like crypto to the mass, right? And I think that's also like a sort of like a core to like DeFi as well. Like how can we make like all our DeFi products more accessible to like mainstream? How we can make like say anyone can also be an LP like in some liquidity pool, right? Or for example, recently we also released some what we call Kyber app. Basically, like anyone can just like one click transaction. They can become like LP in any like liquidity pool, like on Uniswap, on PancakeSwap, and things like that. I think the experience is a lot better compared to say like before that you had like to actually did like 4 or 5 different transactions, right? But yeah, I mean like I think I'm always like bullish on DeFi, and I think like it's a backbone kind of like sector in crypto.
Hart?
Yeah. Okay. So I don't think Vitalik likes this unsustainable yield thing, which I agree with. Dorothy, to your point, I think farming, like yield farming, is a user acquisition strategy, and I think there's actually like really interesting innovations of using a token for user acquisition, many of which I think are cool, some of which I think are scammy. The line between them is hard to define, and I think if Vitalik is supposed to be the spiritual leader of Ethereum, he obviously hates it when scammy things happen, and so that makes sense to me. Where I think I disagree with Vitalik a little bit, or maybe I think he's being super optimistic. So blockchains I do think of as fundamentally a financial technology, which is maybe a bit boomer of me, but I think it's kind of true. And I think the product market fit so the way I like to say it is my bear case for crypto is that it reinvents the financial rails of the traditional finance world, which is a pretty good bear case, right? So we just delete traditional finance and replace it with much better settlement rails. The bull case is that all this interesting other stuff gets built on top of that. And like, call it lens, social networks, coordination games for humans, prediction markets and financial use case. We invent new things that we couldn't do without that. And I think that Vitalik likes to focus on the new stuff that's not just core financial services that gets built on top of this. And I think that would be nice, but I think the financial use case is still kind of the core and most important one.
I also want to highlight that it really doesn't matter what Vitalik thinks, because Ethereum is like for everyone. Kind of
Yeah, we just want to make this panel interesting.
I just want to say that like end of the day, like also like a good scenario is where Ethereum Foundation just like sits back and lets everyone to build and do whatever they want to coordinate amongst each other and do software updates without control. Like that's actually like that's amazing. Like that's also like a really workable thing. And but I understand that there's like this concept of a spiritual leader.
So I got to spice it. So like the Solana Foundation pushes Solana pretty hard, right? Do you think Ethereum should, like the EF should not do that? Or
I mean, being selfish, I would say yes, that would be great. But at the same time, like what if Vitalik won't be around, let's say tomorrow? So like, should we quit? Like, no, like we should still like, keep building what we're building. And, like it's amazing that he's around, and, we have, like, we're lucky enough to have people around. I mean, there's a lot of technologies that has similar position, like Linux with Linus Torvalds being semi-active and for decades, that's amazing. But end of the day, like, it's, if you believe in it and we build things that are really valuable and they help people and they create new opportunities, I think that's enough. And there's more smart people here than anywhere else. So I'm bullish.
I mean, I agree, but yeah.
Okay, we're running out of time, but before I let you guys go, I want to ask you guys. We know there's breakpoint happening next door, and there is us sitting here talking about Ethereum. So, do you think Ethereum is losing its game against Solana? Do you think Solana token price might still outperform Ethereum price? Or do you think it's a non-factor because other innovation still stems from Ethereum?
You definitely made it spicy.
I meant it.
Well, I actually tweeted about this last night after watching the debate between AltLayer founder and the president of Solana Foundation. So I think the analogy that I gave was that I think Solana is actually quite similar to, as a nation, it's quite similar to like Singapore, right? It's a small and efficient, democratic. Everyone works together on one purpose of growing stronger together. And Ethereum is, I think, it's a lot more like the US, right? It's like a lot bigger. It's a lot more democratic, but at the same time, it's very hard like to navigate, right? Like, but it's a land of like, say, core innovations, right? Like all the new innovation happen on Ethereum, right? All the talented people, like they would want to be part of Ethereum because they want to create something new, right? Not like let's make money together. Like, let's be the best like GDP countries in the world, right? Yeah, so that's my
Great
take.
analogy.
Yeah. I mean, I think Ethereum, like the roll-up centric strategy, is super cool in that it encourages innovation in different directions. And like take Mega ETH as an example. I haven't gone deep in their technology, but they're like doing pretty innovative things, I think, on trying to build a new L2. And that's like an experiment that's being run as part of Ethereum where you couldn't do that on Solana. So I think that that's very true. Of course, like I'll also say, like, I'm not a Solana hater at all. I've always taken the view that having I look at three ecosystems. Like Solana is like the monolithic maximalists, and Ethereum's roll-up centric strategy, and then Cosmos as this like wild and messy app chain thesis. And all three ecosystems learn from each other, and frankly, I think they all innovate faster because the other ones exist. Solana probably will outperform ETH because it's starting from a lower base. I think that's just like the way it works. But I also had a more interesting kind of like to go away from the philosophical argument and to like a technical argument. Sharing state is expensive. Like if you have to put state from all your applications in the same place, that's fundamentally an expensive thing to do technically. And the analogy of saying like, okay, my Amazon order history has to live on the same server as like my Gmail, like that doesn't really make sense when those two things don't need to share state at all. And so if you really scale this, the arguments for the roll-up centric strategy really do make sense, where you do split state and it will be fundamentally cheaper. We just have to solve some of these interop problems too.
That's why we're building at AltLayer. We're building app roll-ups.
Yeah.
Sorry, an advertisement.
No, you
in the
should
middle
chill.
Of it.
Chilling is good. I mean, and chilling is part of building. Yeah. And I think for us it's important to also think about like distribution. Like I mean, with Aave we go where the users are. So for example, that if there is a L2 or a network where there is significant amount of users and there's significant amount of revenue for the protocol, there will be Aave at some point. And there might be technical challenges for that, but simply just from the kind of like the business perspective, it makes sense, right? If you think about like real life, like if you have a chain of like stores, you want to open a store where it might be profitable because that grows the business. So I think the same logic should apply here as well. It's similar type of a formula. But obviously at the same time, like the good thing about EVM is that it's really easy to actually copy the the code to these different code bases. So if you go and build something like Aave in a completely new code base, that's going to be tricky and challenging, especially building it securely. And Aave has a lot of stake because it's the most kind of like trusted, biggest lending brand. So there's a lot in stake from that perspective. But going even further down, I mean, fundamentally, like if we're building, something that is resilient or like decentralized system, and we want to help people, like we shouldn't really care too much about the technology. We should just make it available everywhere. And we're already doing that with our first non-EVM deployment with Aave by building, writing in Move and deploying in Aptos as an experiment. And obviously that's not an easy job to do. But same thing for example, Lens. Even if there is a Lens network where basically that's tuned for social transactions, end of the day, the Lens protocol will deploy it everywhere, and it's going to follow the same exact playbook as Aave. So I think, like technicalities aside, there is advantages to distribute across everywhere and think from the business perspective. But I love Ethereum because there's a lot that can be innovated. And if you think a little bit more on the DeFi side, I do think that DeFi will exist where the kind of like most secure an environment will be. And I think that's a ZK-based environment down the line. Because at some point you will put all these stacks together and side by side, and you have to assess like what you will have to choose where you deploy a lot of capital. DeFi is still small, it's 90 billion something. But when we go to trillions, that type of assessment will come into play.
Okay, let's give a round of applause to our panelists. It's amazing to have you guys here.